All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. We're tackling one of the tech world's most well-known contrarians, Paul Graham.
Yeah, he really gets people talking,
Yeah.
doesn't back down from a challenge. His essays, they're full of these bold ideas, unconventional wisdom, even if they ruffle some feathers along the way.
And that's what makes him so interesting to dig into. We're diving into a collection of his essays today. We'll be exploring his experience building the first online store software.
Via web, right?
That's the one. It later became Yahoo Store, but...
Yeah, from way back in the day.
And we're not stopping there. We're going to get into his thoughts on programming languages, design, even his advice for, get this, ambitious teenagers.
And let's be real, who could use a bit of that advice, regardless of age? What fascinates me about Graham is how he doesn't just tell you what to think. He guides you on how to think differently.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter if you're a tech whiz, dreaming of starting your own company, or just someone who enjoys giving their brain a good workout. This deep dive is for you.
Totally. His writing really has this way of making you question your assumptions and see things from a fresh perspective.
Okay, let's jump right in. One of Graham's passions is this programming language, Lisp. Now, before you tune out thinking, wait, I'm not a coder, hang tight. This is about way more than just software.
It really is. It's about having a tool and how using that tool can fundamentally change how you approach a problem, any problem. Graham sees Lisp as this, secret weapon.
A secret weapon.
Yeah, it might not be as popular as some other languages, but it's elegant and it's simple, and that lets you build these incredibly powerful solutions efficiently, too.
Interesting. I've never coded in Lisp myself.
So he uses this analogy of a made-up language called blub to get this point across.
Glove.
Yeah, blub. Imagine blub is say, a really basic paint program on your computer, right? You get stuff done, but you're limited in what you can create. Lisp, on the other hand, that's like having the professional-grade design software.
Okay, I'm starting to see the difference.
And it's not even just about the software. It's the tools, how the right tools can open up these new ways of thinking. Like with blub, you might not realize there are better, more elegant solutions out there. Your tool is limiting your perspective. But Lisp, or any tool that pushes you beyond those limits, it helps you break free from those constraints.
So how can we relate this back to, everyday life?
Imagine trying to assemble a piece of furniture, but you've only got a screwdriver. You might get there eventually, but it's going to be way harder, take way longer than if you had a full toolbox.
And probably be a lot more frustrating.
For sure. And you might end up with a less sturdy final product, too. That's blub. It's like the limitations we put on ourselves without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Because we stick to what's familiar, even if it's not the most powerful tool or way of thinking.
That's a really great way to put it. And the interesting thing is, Graham, he lived this. He and his partner, Robert Morris, they decided to build their online store software, via web, back in the mid-90s.
Oh, yeah. Via web. Back when the internet was still figuring itself out.
Right. Way before Amazon, before online shopping was even a thing. It was like the Wild West of e-commerce.
Yeah. And they were pioneers.
And they made this, well, some might say controversial decision to build their whole platform on Lisp.
Which back then, you got to admit, seemed like a gamble, right? Lisp wasn't exactly the hottest thing.
It wasn't the obvious choice, that's for sure.
And they were up against competitors who were using the more common tools, your CGI scripts and such.
It was like they brought a spaceship to a horse and buggy race.
Yeah.
But going back to your blub analogy, that decision to embrace the unconventional, it gave them a huge advantage. Their competitors were stuck using these clunky CGI scripts, which were slow and just plain inflexible. It's like trying to build a skyscraper with just bricks and mortar.
Yeah, while Graham and Morris had access to steel and cranes with Lisp.
Exactly. They could build features in days that took their competitors weeks, maybe even months. And because their software was so much faster, it could handle a lot more traffic too.
So this is where we see that technical advantage translate into real business success, right?
Absolutely. In those early days of the internet, speed and reliability were everything, and via web, they had it in spades.
It's amazing how many of those early internet success stories involve making unconventional tech choices that gave them a leg up. It really highlights the importance of looking beyond the status quo, of not being afraid to experiment.
Absolutely. And Graham's essays are full of these kinds of insights, especially when it comes to startup strategy. He's a big fan of rapid prototyping, of constantly iterating based on user feedback.
Right. He talks about how they were constantly shipping new code, sometimes multiple times a day. They weren't afraid to break things, to try new things, and to learn from their mistakes.
It's like that old saying, fail fast, fail often.
But the key is to learn from those failures, to use them to improve your product.
Exactly. And this ties into another one of Graham's key insights, which is the importance of prioritizing what's essential over what's merely impressive.
So, focusing on building a product that actually solves a real problem for users, even if it's not the most visually stunning or feature-rich thing out there.
Right.
He talks about how, in those early days of iOweb, they were laser-focused on building the features their users actually needed and wanted. They weren't worried about creating the flashiest website, having the most bells and whistles.
It's about function over flash. Get it out there, get feedback, and keep improving.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another area where Graham's thinking really shines design.
Okay, so we're moving from lines of code to something a bit more, well, aesthetically pleasing.
Right. But even in the realm of design, Graham brings his signature contrarian perspective. He actually challenges the whole notion that taste is completely subjective.
So it's not just a matter of beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Not quite. He argues that good design, whether it's in code, art, or any other creative field, it's rooted in fundamental principles, even if those principles are hard to articulate.
So there's a method to the madness. A reason why some things just work visually while others fall flat.
Exactly. He uses this metaphor. When you're making art, the temptation to be lazy is as great as in any other kind of work. He's trying to drive home the point that good design requires effort, attention to detail, and a constant striving for excellence.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, beauty is subjective, so why bother putting in the extra effort? But Graham challenges that assumption, arguing that by developing good taste, a discerning eye for what works and what doesn't, you set yourself apart from the crowd.
And it's not just about standing out. By developing good taste, you're more likely to create work that resonates deeply with people. Because, even though personal preferences exist, there are underlying principles of good design that tend to hold true across the board. Things like balance, clarity, and functionality.
So whether you're writing code, designing a website, or even just decorating your living room, developing your own sense of good taste is a worthwhile endeavor. It's about training your eye to recognize and appreciate quality and then striving for that quality in your own work. It's like developing a sixth sense, for what makes something truly great.
Totally. And that sense of good taste, that ability to tell the good from the bad, it's so valuable no matter what you're doing. Evaluating a product, a piece of writing, even just deciding where to eat.
Speaking of valuable insights, we can't forget Graham's advice for, well, he calls them ambitious teenagers, but let's be honest, we could all use a little dose of that from time to time, right?
No, absolutely. His essay, What You'll Wish You'd Known, it's full of this really honest, sometimes blunt advice. Cuts through a lot of the noise we hear, especially as young people.
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He talks about how the world feels like it's designed for conformity, especially for teenagers, and how easy it is to feel lost, unsure of where you fit in.
Yeah, but the power in his message is how he empowers you to take control. He encourages questioning everything, exploring your passions, and embracing the unconventional.
It's like he's giving you permission to think for yourself, to create your own path, even if it means going against the grain.
And that message, it's bigger than just teenagers, right?
Yeah.
It's for anyone who's felt stuck, lost, unsure of what they want to do.
He reminds us it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to experiment, to make mistakes, and it's never too late to start shaping the life you want.
Exactly. Take ownership of your own journey. Don't be afraid to stand out.
As we wrap up our deep dive into the mind of Paul Graham, I think big takeaway here is this idea of embracing the marginal.
Absolutely. Whether it's an offbeat programming language challenging those traditional design principles or just daring to think differently. Graham pushes us to look past the status quo, to not be afraid to forge our own paths.
It's trusting your gut, developing your own sense of what works, and never stopping learning and growing.
And who knows, maybe you'll stumble upon your own blub on the way. That thing that unlocks a whole new level of thinking, of creativity.
This has been fascinating, to say the least. So if you're feeling even a little bit inspired by what you've heard today, I highly encourage you to check out Graham's essays.
They'll really get you thinking. Unconventional wisdom, a good dose of humor, you'll be questioning assumptions, seeing things in a whole new light.
And who knows, maybe you'll even feel like sharing some of that wisdom with an ambitious teenager in your life.
Or anyone, really. Anyone ready to break free and embrace the power of thinking differently.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.